I'm a nice person. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It has nothing to do with you.
No, I'm sure it doesn't.
It has everything to do with Mr. Harrington's schedule.
That's fine. We're all busy here. But you have the floor, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. For the record, Michael Vose, representing Rockingham District 9, Chair of Science, Technology, and Energy. And I'm here this morning to introduce House Bill 1258, relative to the implementation of the Department of Energy. As you'll all recall, a little less than a year ago, the governor signed House Bill 2, which, among other things, established a new Department of Energy. That establishment forced the breakup of the Public Utilities Commission into two separate bodies, the Department of Energy being the other. As you'll also recall, HB 2 contained a 60-plus, might even have been 70 pages, amendment to create the Department of Energy. It was a huge amendment. And it had to comb through hundreds of statutes to change references to the commission, to the Department of Energy, back and forth, et cetera. It was a complicated process. And they got most of it right, but not all of it. There were omissions and inadvertent mistakes in the legislation to establish the Department of Energy. In addition to that, once the department started operating, it discovered other discrepancies between legislation that governed the department and the commission and what they were doing in practice and what they needed to do in practice. So the department and the commission requested this legislation. Now, it's a huge piece of legislation. I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it, and it runs to a total of 11 pages with, I've forgotten, 32 different sections. And many of these sections are simple, routine changes, like changing the words Public Utilities Commission to Department of Energy. Others are more involved. I don't think it would be useful to go through every one of these here this morning unless you want to do that. What I will tell you is that in the House, we had two full subcommittee work sessions on this the amended version of this bill, all the details that are in this bill. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Each of those sessions lasted multiple hours, and we had lots of input from various stakeholders about the changes that the department and the commission wanted to make via this legislation. We were satisfied that the changes that this legislation implements were good ones. And the committee voted for this legislation 22-0. And it then passed the full House on a voice vote. So this was a completely bipartisan agreement that this legislation is effective and makes changes that are important for the continued operation of the commission and the future operation of the Department of Energy. A couple of pieces of the legislation that I will point out and highlight for you. On page 2, line 12, Department of Energy transfer of rules, orders, and approvals. This is an important part of the legislation. The Public Utilities Commission had a vast set of rules to govern its operations and the operations of the utilities and other entities that are affected by the commission. Well, many of those rules and much of the oversight of those entities gets transferred to the Department of Energy. So the Department of Energy is going to have to essentially create rules to do what the Public Utilities Commission rules did previously. Now, there is some possibility that there'll be a way to transfer these rules from the commission to the Department of Energy. But there were a few details that needed to be cleaned up. And this particular part of the amendment, I think, is an important part because it provides a period of 5 years for no longer than 5 years, I should say, for the department to do the necessary work to transfer and or create the rules necessary to continue the operation of the two entities. So that's an important part of this legislation.
Yep.
If that's all right if I
Sure.
pause on
Oh,
that one,
absolutely.
because that was an area I had a question on. So, could you explain a little more about the 5 years? You know, I'm trying to remember from Jelcar, you know, how long it was between mandatory rule revision and review. And, you know, I just wondered about the 5 years and if something, you know, did not, and given the Jelcar, the rules process, might we end up in a kind of a gap if something's expired and hasn't been reapproved yet? Or so, any further thoughts about why the 5 years mandatory there?
The 5 years, I believe, is just to put a time frame on when all of this work needs to be done. It does not replace the process described in RSA 541A for developing rules. That process remains in place. This covers the fact that these rules need to be transferred and need to be created. But there are a lot of them, and the chance that they could do them in a year or maybe even 2 years might be slim. So, but it did seem worthwhile to have some kind of a deadline to get these rules done. And so after much discussion, it was determined that 5 years was a reasonable period of time. Now, that doesn't mean that a particular set of rules that the period can be dragged out to adopt these rules to 5 years. It means that all of the rule making has to be done within 5 years. And it'll be done in increments. So the rules to affect electric utilities, for example, would be done in one segment. And then rules to affect gas utilities would be done in another segment. And they might even overlap to some degree. But this provision of law, as I understand it, is to cover the time period required for the department to make sure that it gets all its rules in place.
Okay, if I just may follow.
Yeah.
So, did you have any conversation about whether there should be an escape hatch there in case the commissioner decides we need a little more time on anything?
I don't recall there was any discussion of that. I think that the commission or the department, when they testified on this amendment, they said they thought that they could probably get all this work done in 3 years.
Okay. Well, I'll ask them.
So the escape hatch was essentially the additional 2 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Gaeta?
A very minor detail, but on line 20 of page 2, the sentence that starts halfway through, to the extent the department acts pursuant, should the word "to" be after pursuant?
Yes, it should.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Presumably something that would be caught during the enrolled bills process, right?
I'm on that committee.
Thank you, Senator Gray.
Lucky you.
I know. It's so dry. You still have the floor, so.
So that's a highlight that I wanted to make sure everybody understood. The rest of the rest of the amendment is pretty straightforward. There's nothing dramatic in it. These changes are all changes that you would expect in a situation like this. It's also probably true that even the passage of this bill as amended may not cover all the bases. As the department and the commission continue working in the future, they may discover other areas in which repairs might need to be made. So this is not necessarily the end-all and be-all, but it is the first major piece of fixing the process that we have encountered so far. And I think it warrants the full support of this committee and the Senate. And I'm certain that the Department of Energy will testify after me and describe further any items in this legislation that they feel you need to pay attention to.
Thank you, Senator Waters, for
Yeah.
the question.
Thank you. On page 7, on the public waters piece, I think I understand all that's being done here. The one question I did have here on the Department of Energy's license issuing and the, substantially affecting public rights and public waters, state-owned lands, et cetera. As I'm sure you know, we had a big one about this in the Great Bay with the new cabling going under there. But do you think there should be an appeals process here?
A what
An
process?
appeals process?
An appeals process?
Yeah. I mean, it's non-adjudicative, but, I think on some other things, even if it's been non-adjudicative, we've said there could be an appeal.
We did discuss the rights in public waters and lands issue quite a bit. And if memory serves, the department said that the commission still retains some authority over the governance of these matters. And the department takes over other aspects of that governance. So if there is a dispute, then that dispute would go to the Public Utilities Commission, as I understand it.
So maybe we should mention that, reference that here as an appeal process.
I'd have to go back through the language. I think it might be mentioned at some point.
Yeah, I just don't.
But you can verify that with the Department of Energy spokesman.
Right, maybe it's in the next paragraph. Thank you, I'll take that
Rights
one
of
further.
appeal, line 22.
Yeah. 32120, 37120, okay. All right.
Yes, that
Yeah,
section,
was
rights
it.
of
Thank
appeal,
you, Mr.
right.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
May appeal a department decision to the Public
Okay.
Utilities Commission within 30 days of the department's decision. So that's lines 23, 24. I thought it was in
I
there.
look to the bold and not to the.
I thought it was in there. I just,
Good question, though.
All right, I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gray.
Am I correct in that rules expire after 10 years and that 5-year may be just a way of trying to have that?
rules do expire according to RSA 541A after 10 years and are supposed to be reevaluated, which I understand doesn't always happen.
It does not.
But yeah, the 5-year limit would certainly fall well under that 10-year. As I recall, during testimony before our committee, the Department of Energy did say that some of those rules are up for review or will be up for review soon. So part of that process will happen as they make this transfer. They'll review those rules as well. Mm-hmm.
Senator Perkins Coca.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, for being here. I this as a clarifying question. So it appears that on, well, page 5, 6, parts of 9, essentially, what seems to be the underlying principle is that utilities and telecommunications carriers will now be fully under the purview of the Department of Energy, where they were under the purview of the PUC previously for certain functions, obviously not adjudicatory functions. But then on page 3, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, Reggie, seems to be under the purview of DES with a review conducted by the Department of Energy on page 4. So I just wondered if for our education, you could just maybe address both those pieces a little bit for our education.
Well, this legislation does retain that the Department of Energy, the Department of Environmental Services does oversee the Reggie program. The Department of Energy will be involved, but ultimate oversight of that program stays with the Department of Environmental Services. And that language is in here somewhere.
I think it might be page 4.
I don't remember it off the
section
top of my head.
14. Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Mostly, I guess the first part was just telecommunication carriers and utilities. Like, there's a lot of language about poles and, you know, just sort of functions of utilities. Those will now be sort of fully under the purview of the department where they were previously under the purview of the commission.
So the Department of Environmental Services and Reggie is on page 3, lines 30 and 31. And what was your other question about telecommunications?
Sure. So this is like sections, I guess section 17 starts on the very bottom of page 4, continues on to page 5. Is about telecommunications carriers, and then section 18 and 19 on page 5 address functions that the department will have over telecommunication carriers and utilities. And I'm really just clarifying that that those sort of regulating functions and that sort of regulating function will now be under the department as opposed to the commission.
Well, I think section 17 is all about how the how assessment of fees will be done.
Okay.
And section 18 is also similar in that regard. One of the beauties, I think, of HB2 in breaking up what was the Public Utilities Commission into a new PUC and a Department of Energy is it allows the PUC to become a truly adjudicative organization or body, purely adjudicative in a regulatory sense. And now the Department of Energy can implement policy in a non-adjudicative way as much as, you know, as necessary. And the adjudicative nature of any questions can go to the PUC. And there's a bright red line between the two. And in fact, there's language in this amendment, if I could find it, in its 11 pages, that verifies or emphasizes that bright red line. It is actually on page 2, on lines 21 and 22, where it says that the department shall not be subject to RSA 541A29 or A29A. That essentially maintains the bright red line between the commission and the department. And while it's not obvious from the language, we had quite a bit of discussion with the department about what that means and how that would work. And I'm sure they can talk about it further if you want them to.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Josh Elliott. Unless Rep. Douglas, you want Thomas?
No, I'm not speaking.
Yeah, you can mark either way. Okay, so Josh Elliott, final speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Josh Elliott with the New Hampshire Department of Energy. This will be rare, but the department is in favor of this bill. We'd like to thank the House ST&E committee for their very detailed work and bipartisan work on sort of scrubbing out all the details of this bill. I think as Representative O's very accurately encapsulated it. Anytime you're creating something new or moving things around in state government, there's always going to be sort of extraneous pieces that don't get picked up and will continue to get picked up along the way. I realize you are already a little bit behind on time. If you would like, I can do a very high level overview of the section by sections, or I can stop talking. I see Senator Guida nodding, so I'm assuming I will be brief. So, Section 1 of the bill adds clarifying language. This is actually a public utilities request to allow them additional flexibility in the actual implementation of the department and of the new adjudicative PUC. Section 2 gives the department the right to be a matter or authority to petition before any proceeding before the PUC and automatically become a party. This language in this Roman 3 actually mirrors the same rights that the Office of Consumer Advocate has in their statutes. Section 3 gives the department staff the same exemptions to opening an adjudicative process as they had when they were at the PUC. And you'll see there's a lot of these have cropped up as the department has been working through implementation of where a line was drawn between PUC and DOE functions, and sometimes that line wasn't drawn precisely in the right spot. So in some cases, the staff may be on one side of the line, the duties ended up on the other side of the line. So this is sort of straightening out where that line should be. Sections 4 and Sections 5, going on to page 2, are actually small repeals because those powers are now included in Section 2 with the right for petition being involved, as well as being a member of proceedings. Section 6, I know there was a lot of discussion on rules. Scott Eaton from Delcar was actually the one who suggested this language. And again, with the 5 years, and just to clarify on that 5 year, as Senator Gray mentioned, rules are up every 10 years. The department would view this as was mentioned, there are some rules that the PUC currently has that are up within that time period. We will be addressing those rules as they come up, with the maximum amount of time being 5 years. Again, as Representative O says, the department does not believe we will need all 5 years to do this, but this is, again, sort of that safety hatch in case something unforeseen happens, but the department is already in the process of sort of dividing up those rules between the Public Utilities Commission and the department, and then figuring out, okay, who needs what, where does everything lie, and then what sets of rules do we both need. Section 7, even though it's a repeal and reenact, the only thing that section does is to add the Commissioner of the Department of Energy or designee to the EASY board. Sections 8 through 13, starting on page 3 and continuing on to the next, all deal with the Renewable Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or Reggie. Prior to this, the commission had all of the duties relative to it. This essentially swaps out commission, inserts the Department of Energy, because the commission is no longer a party to any of these matters. Again, still the same organization, the same structure still exists. It's still housed over at DES, but just the PUC's functions are now fully brought over to the Department of Energy. Moving on, Section 15 is just a reference change. The Department of Energy will have the authority to accelerate or delay by 1 year any incremental increases in Class 1 and Class 2 of the RPS. Right now, there's sort of an odd division. The department has Class 3 and Class 4, while the PUC has Class 1 and Class 2. All the statutory charges and the RPS are all with the department, so this makes sense to have all of it with the department. Section 16 was a request of the PUC to give them some flexibility in issuing shorter notices rather than doing a full write-up, but again, it does not limit them to having shorter write-ups in their orders. Sections 17 and 18, as was discussed prior, deals with the collection of utility assessments, which is entirely a function of the department. So that is just to clean up that last reference. Section 19 and 20 deals with the, through 20 deals with medical disconnects. The staff, again, are all over at DOE while the determination is still with the PUC. This would move it entirely over to the DOE. There's still an appeals process that's part of it, is laid out in the statute. Sections 21 allows for any of the complaints that are brought before the department. If they don't like the department's resolution, there's an appeal process to go to the Public Utilities Commission. Sections 22 and 23, which we discussed previously, are discussing crossing licenses. Mr. Chairman, as you pointed out, that right of appeal of any decision of the department is included on line 22 following on page 7. Sections 24 just clarifies that the PUC has jurisdiction over improvements for gas extensions. Sections 25 clarifies, this just, again, mistaken reference to the commission regarding telephone service. This is an authority that is elsewhere in statute is wholly given to the Department of Energy. 26 adds back the PUC, which was over poles and attachments, where there is still some PUC jurisdiction over poles and attachments, so making sure they're including as well. 27 is just removing historic language, dealing with restructuring that is no longer applicable. 28 is just a stray reference to the commission dealing with competitive suppliers, which again is fully with the department. Section 29 is dealing with the systems benefits charge report, just making it clear that it is just the department's responsibility, not the department and the commission. Section 30 is regarding participation in regional activities, interest groups and trade groups and things like that. It just makes it clear that between the PUC and the DOE that one agency or the other may be the lead agency, but there's no prohibition on staff from either of the other agencies participating in those types of groups. Section 31, Senator Waters, this is your energy storage from Senate Bill 91 from last year. So this corrects it and brings it back over to the Department of Energy, where it will be completed, where we have the staff to do this kind of work. Section 32 is just a reference change in the state budget, making sure that all the codes line up with the correct agencies. And then Section 33 is a series of repeals, and I'll just walk through those as well. Roman 1, relative prohibited services, that this is not going away. It's just referenced elsewhere in the PUC statutes, so this is just a duplicate reference. Sections 2, 3, Romans 2, Romans 3, Romans 4 all deal with crossing licenses. Romans 2 and 3 are historic and are no longer necessary. Section 4 is actually more restrictive, so it allows, the state still has to go through a license, the entities still have to go through a safety review. So even though it looks like it's removing an exception, there's still the safety review that's occurring. And then lastly, Roman 5 is another historic reference prior to restructuring that is no longer relevant. And then, of course, Section 34 is the effective date. So I apologize, I've been a bit long-winded, but that's measure and verse of what this bill does.
Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate it. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you much.
All right, anybody else speak on this? Anybody want to speak on this? Go once. Twice. Close the meeting. All right, thanks. We're going to open up the hearing for 1270. From Representative Thomas.
Thank you, and good morning, members of the Senate Committee. I'm pleased to be here this morning to introduce House Bill 1270. I'd like to begin by saying that at the beginning of the year, the Speaker of the House asked all committees to review any committees, commissions, to see if they need to be continued or discontinued, because I'm sure, as you're aware, we have well over 400 committees and commissions that are assigned, very difficult to populate. Some meet, some don't meet. And we had several submitted this year, as you're well aware, to add to that list, and most of them are well needed. But in reviewing our request to look at committees, I looked at the Oversight Committee and felt that this was one committee that it was time to retire. Now, we have a couple of really very good committees in our Science and Tech Committee that we're attached to, Easy Board being one, and the Commission on Offshore Wind, very important. And the point I'm making here is it's a very specific purpose, which is very important when you're having a committee or a commission to have a specific purpose, that you don't cast too wide of a net, otherwise you kind of go around in circles. So I looked at the history of the Oversight Committee, and just to let you know that there's been at least 4 times in its history where it's come up or has been amended. It was established back in 1996 to oversee the deregulation and divestiture of our electric utilities. Well, it was a very specific purpose, and it served its purpose very well. It was amended in 2001 to update for what was happening at the time, and in 2008 it was amended again to reduce the size of the committee from 14 to 7. Again, only elected officials, House of Representatives and senators are on that committee. In 2018, the purpose had been resolved. The divestiture was complete. There was no real need for this committee, but at the time, it was felt that we could repurpose the committee, and as a result, we had a bill that was passed, and I'd just like to read what the new purpose of this committee was. It was, I think it's pretty involved. For the 7-member committee of elected officials, the committee was charged with monitoring the activities before the Public Utilities Commission and other cognizant state agencies in regard to evolving changes in the provision of electric services to New Hampshire customers, including modernization of the electric grid, development of technologies for electric storage, electrification of transportation, the growth of distributed generation, the Commission's role in a deregulated market, and such matters as may arise that may present opportunities to improve the delivery of electric services or to reduce cost. Wow, that's a very, very large charge for a small committee of only elected officials. I looked at that and I said, really, what has been done since 2018? Well, the last report that I was able to find was 2018, when the purpose had just been changed. Since then, best of my knowledge, there have been no meetings. I did a search. The state library has no records of this committee's report on file. So then I went back to see if there was any need to call a meeting. And to be honest with you, since then we have a new Department of Energy. We have a Public Utilities Commission that is going forward to be more of adjudication area. We have the SEC, whose purposes are being looked at for being revised. We've had changes in the last couple of years as to what is happening in our area in the state that really don't mesh anymore with what the purpose of this committee was. To be an effective committee, I feel that there has to be a specific and direct purpose so that the members can go forth and do what they have to do. I believe that a fresh start on such a committee, should one be necessary, could be reintroduced next session if there is a specific purpose for having one. Like I said, the Easy Board we have has many members on it. They do a good job, and the and the Offshore Wind Commission is something that's very important and very specific. So I just don't think that this committee, with the members assigned to it, can meet the objectives of what we have and you know, what was done. So I ask that we look at this carefully. Of the committees that we have, we really should keep committees and commissions that are very worthwhile, direct to the point, and we have resources that are very limited. I'm not sure that Senator Avard or Senator Waters, that you know that you are members of this committee.
Probably.
There's been no need to meet, no specific request, and I just feel that instead of trying to patchwork something that's been in existence since 1996, that we need to go back and rethink and perhaps start doing some house cleaning. I will mention this though, on my bill 1270, I went back to make sure that any reports that were being fed through the committee, to make sure that they were still being fed through the Science and Tech and the Energy and the Senate Energy
And natural resources.
Committee and Natural Resources. And we made changes in 1270 to make sure that either the committee was stricken off, and to make sure that the two committees were still getting those reports. And we feel in my committee that any reports that come to us, if they need to be reviewed, can be done in the form of a subcommittee. We don't need to have a Senate and House committee formed just to review a report. So with that, I'll end my testimony. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer the best I can.
Thank you, Representative. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, Representative Vose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I share a quick anecdote with the committee, I'd like to point out that in the previous bill, HB 1258, if you look on page 9, lines 29 and 30, this Legislative Oversight Committee is mentioned in that bill. Should this bill pass, that language would probably be, it would be ineffective and would probably eventually be deleted.
Thank you for that.
So to make a quick point about the subject of this bill, I spent 40 years of my life working in the computer software industry as a documentation and communications professional. I wrote user manuals for complicated software products. And the methodology we typically used when we came out with a new version of a piece of software was to take the old manual with all its flaws, with all its warts, and then just update it with new information and send that along to customers. Well, as you can imagine, after 6, 7, 8 iterations of a product, a user manual would become almost unusable. The process should have worked this way. When a new update of a software product became available, you should throw away the old manual and start from scratch, rewriting it based on the comments you got from about the previous manual, where it was weak, where it needed improvement, etc. But of course, in the software business, which is a fast-moving business, there was never any time to do that. I bring up this anecdote to show you, or to demonstrate, that this Legislative Oversight Committee has basically been through the same process. Rather than throwing it out and starting over again, we've tried to tack things onto it to change its purpose in life. And it really hasn't worked. So I strongly endorse the movement of this bill, HB 1270, to eliminate this Legislative Oversight Committee. And if we as a legislative body determine there's a need for a committee to do something along the same lines, let's start fresh. Let's start a new committee, define it very specifically what it will do, and not bring along a legacy committee that really doesn't have a clearly defined purpose. So thank you for that opportunity to bring that to your attention.
Questions from the committee? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. So, referring back to 1258, if we repeal this committee, the one reference I see is the Department of Energy shall report on an annual basis to the Air Pollution Advisory Committee under RSA 125J11 and the Legislative Oversight Committee to monitor the transportation on the status of implementation of Reggie. So, in that case, would you want, I mean, we could strike it, but would you want that the report would go to the appropriate House and Senate committees?
That would probably be an appropriate thing to do, yes.
Okay, good, thank you. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative Vose.
Thank you.
Representative Platt, you didn't say whether you want to speak or not.
Pardon?
It says you're in support, but it doesn't indicate one.
Not speaking.
Okay. Josh?
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Josh Elliott with the Department of Energy. I will be very brief. This bill, as mentioned by Representative Vose and Representative Thomas, does the department is neutral. Excuse me. As mentioned by Representative Vose and Representative Thomas, all of the duties or reports that were required to be filed with this commission now go to other places, including the ones done by the department. So with that, there's no change in the amount of information that the department is generating. It's just who it's going to is slightly different. Regarding your comment, Senator Waters, about the potential conflict in 1258, we view this as potentially just as a timing issue. So it would just depend if 1270 is signed last. They both have the effective date of 60 days after passage. So that would mean that section would not be, that the section in 1258 modifying this committee would no longer be relevant, if that makes sense. I'm sorry, I may have been answering a question that wasn't.
Mr. Chairman, but you know, the point is though, Josh, that if that committee is repealed, then there's no place for that report on Reggie to go. So I think that regardless, ought to add there that the report on Reggie shall go to the Senate and House committee.
Oops.
It's on page 3 of 1258. So that way, no matter what the sequence is, because goodness knows if we're going to remember the right order to pass them in when we get to the floor.
Because I believe it's actually the same section.
It's page 3, and it's section 6, page 3, starting line 11. 1258.
Yeah, so it is the same statute. It's RSA 125.021 Roman 6.
All right. So we'd want, you know, that gets repealed. I mean, so then we want to, that report should go somewhere.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I
So and
think
then
that's why we would put in
yes.
the two committees there. So we can figure that out.
Okay,
If
we're
that-
happy to provide any technical expertise as needed.
Senator Gray.
In your prior employment, haven't we written amendments to bills like 1270 that have two options in there?
Yes, you could do
And it could all be done in 1270?
Yes, you could do contingent language in 1270. I think Dave Alaconis in OLS would be.
Yeah, either way.
He did the last
Thank you.
one. Yep. Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, you're my last speaker, so Representative Thomas, do you have some final statements? You got a chance to follow up real quick?
Yeah, real quick, if I understood the last question, and I would point out that in my bill 1270, it refers to RSA 125J:11, where the Reg report does get submitted to our two committees, as well as to the Department of Energy. So if there was a question there, I just want to clarify
So
it.
it seems like it's all okay.
Mhm. Seeing no further questions, we're going to close the hearing on 1270 and open up the hearing to 1285. Representative McGee. Representative Oxenham, are you here? Hello? Do they know it's, their bill's up? Are they out in the hall? No. No? One of you reps want?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to introduce House Bill 1285 relative to multi-use energy data platform.
Questions from the committee?
And it would be fair, Senator Gray, to say that this changes one word, Department of Energy, 3 words, Department of Energy to Commission, in order to clarify this new arrangement.
As you can see on the next page, this is a very brief bill and has not generated a lot of interest on the House side.
Thank you, Senator, for your testimony. No further questions from the committee. All right, and again, no, Representative Thomas not indicating one way or another, or Representative Platt, so we're going to consider that a no. And Josh, would you like to speak about this real quickly? You're my final speaker? Oh, Representative Bose, I thought you said no. Yeah, you got marked no.
I wasn't planning to speak, but I didn't realize the other 2 representatives weren't going to be here. So I just wanted to say that this bill passed the committee unanimously and was a bipartisan supported bill.
Okay, thank you. Josh, can you be as brief?
I will be very brief. This is still subject to an open PUC docket. If anyone's interested, it's DE 19-197, where they're going through the process of developing sort of the operating parameters around the multi-use data platform. It makes sense for the commission to have the duty to also deal with the privacy issues as well.
Well done. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. 1285. I'm going to open up the hearing to HB 1331. We'll hear from Representative Baruti. Representative Baruti, seeing, are we going to have Senator Gray do this again?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to introduce House Bill 1331 relative to the power line maintenance and construction.
All right. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator, for your testimony. Josh Elliott, would you like to speak on this one?
Getting all my steps in today. I know, I really should have sat in the front. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Josh Elliott with Department of Energy. The department takes no position on the bill. However, we would like to point out that there is no license that currently exists to do this. So striking the reference to a license in statute that doesn't exist, I would seem to think is a common sense thing to do. I will point out the language is still retained, that it is utility approval is still required. So it's not just somebody going out saying, I'm going to start, attaching lines. The utility in question still has the approval authority.
All right.
And you don't want to tempt the legislature to invent a new license, do you?
That would not be my lane, so.
All right. Further questions from the committee? Seeing none. Donna from Eversource in support, not wishing to speak. Nobody wanting to speak, so we're going to close the hearing. 1331. We're going to hear from the next sponsor for HB 1148 and Representative Platt. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have written testimony. It was over in the table. Maybe it's been passed out. I don't know. HB 1148 is designed to keep municipalities from enacting ordinances to prevent fuel types for power production or conversion. Determinations of this type are a state responsibility solely, and we have a site evaluation committee to aid in this decision-making. It may be replaced in the future with another body, but it is a state responsibility. Any kind of power generation or conversion when proposed, no matter the nature, appears to engender a negative response There's simply a not in my backyard mentality or ideology driving an argument against a particular technology. Antrim Wind, Northern Pass, Liberty Utilities granted bridge, 27 miles of new natural gas pipeline to be buried along Route 101 from Stratham to Manchester, along with the Epping LNG storage facility, were recent examples of controversial proposals, all of which, except Antrim Wind, failed or were modified to something entirely different. The Site Evaluation Committee may still red light and kill many proposed future projects, but the projects ought not to be subject to death by 1,000 cuts at a municipal level. The bill amends RSA 362 by inserting a new section 362.9 to prohibit government entities subordinate to the state from restricting the types of fuel sources that may be used for energy. As such, it is geared towards energy production or conversion. It's pointed out to me that Senate Bill 86 passed last session and now law prohibited restrictions on the installation of certain commercially available heating systems and engaging the services of certain energy providers. I see the subject matter as different. One prohibiting restrictions on energy production or conversion, the other prohibiting restrictions on heating systems. Nevertheless, I went back to OLS to see if the language of either could be tweaked to cut down on overall verbiage in the statutes. I was told no. I was told by OLS that SB 86 that you passed last year amends RSA 155A2 and RSA 67451, both of which are relative to the state building code. The language of this new section inserted by this bill is inserted into RSA 362 because it's regulation of energy production, so I confirm my belief. And so it's a similar idea. It's a state responsibility, and with this bill, municipalities can still have zoning, let's say, affecting where placement of wind is or offsets and stuff like that, and project has to follow that for solar or wind or whatever. Project has to follow that, but a municipality can't deliberately throw a monkey wrench into it by changing zoning to prohibit a project from going forward. There's a fine line there. And of course, a municipality can go to the Site Evaluation Committee or whatever replaces it and express their either opposition or support and suggest ideas for placement and all that stuff. But this is just it's becoming more and more activist municipalities are saying no up front, and that's not right. That's all. Thank you.
And so are you saying that municipalities are targeting projects and then making rules to support their targets?
They may. This prohibits it.
Does this undermine local control?
Well, there is no local control in this state. The control that the localities have is granted by the legislature.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Oh, Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So kind of following up on what the chairman was asking, then I see the sense of this, but on line 6, or 5 and 6, has the effect of restricting or prohibiting. And, you know, in terms of local planning and zoning and so on and so forth, how would that get determined? That's something that one person might say is, well, we need certain zoning because of the terrain here or something like that, but another person might say, no, you're restricting this type of fuel source. So not being a lawyer, we think that lawyers can find lots of things to get deeply involved in. So that was my question.
Repeat it, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So lines 5 and 6 has this line of this wording about has the effect of restricting or prohibiting. And so my question would be, how would that be determined?
I'm not sure I understand the question. A municipality could not pass an ordinance saying no nukes or no wind or no solar or whatever. They just can't do that. Nor can they deliberately impose zoning to kill a project. So whatever the project nature is.
Well, that's, if I may, Mr. I mean, that's kind of the question I'm getting at. How would one determine that something was being deliberately done for that effect?
That's something that the Site Evaluation Committee or its successor would have to determine.
If I may ask one other question. So I didn't have down the lines 14 to 16. Now, I wouldn't really know whether any such statutes already exist out there, and so what I was wondering is that if there is something out there and we're saying right now upon passage that that whatever might be out there is void, and I don't know, again, it's a lot of ifs here. If it exists, would this be disruptive? So the question is, maybe that section have an effective date of 1/1/23, so that if one of these exists, the municipality have a little chance to react and figure out what it's going to do.
This bill, when it came over to your committee, the Energy and Natural Resources are now in your hands to modify as you see fit.
Well, I thank you for that great power you've granted, but I don't want to cause heartburn unnecessarily,
Yeah,
Representative.
I don't think there's any necessarily ordinances out there. But the intent is that municipalities should not be doing this.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think leaving it the way it is causes much heartburn either, but so it's up to you.
Beats me. I mean, there's a lot of ifs there, weren't there?
All set?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gage, and then, after you're the last speaker, and then after that, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, to exec.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. So I don't think this is a not in my backyard issue. I'm looking at this. Sure, John Gage, the record John Gage from Windham. I'm a local energy committee volunteer in my town, Windham. And across the state, towns and cities are committing to science-based targets of net zero emissions by 2050. In order to meet those goals, they're going to have to come up with local policies, one of which would obviously be not allowing more gas heating and electricity generation in their town, because that's going the wrong way. It's not a not in my backyard problem. It's how do we meet our citizens' elected goals for pollution reduction? Now, you guys voted last year to not allow this for heating, which I believe was a mistake, because heating with natural gas, although it's cheap right now, there are many towns that see carbon pricing coming not at the state level, but at the federal level. And whether it's through an administration that is forward-looking and wants to reduce carbon pollution in the most cost-effective way possible, or what is even more likely, the rest of the world is pricing carbon. The EU has a price of $100 per ton of CO2 emitted right now. Canada is using carbon fee and dividend and will be $135 per ton in 2030. The EU is using something called border carbon adjustments, starting in 2026, to charge its trading partners for their pollution if they're not charging for it themselves in their own economy. In other words, when we produce something in New Hampshire and try to export it into any country in the EU, our manufacturers will be charged a carbon fee at the border in order to sell a good in the EU. Now, Canada is also looking at doing this, the UK and Japan. Carbon prices are spreading around the world, and they are rising. And border carbon adjustments are going to be used to charge free polluting countries for their pollution and trade. These countries that are pricing carbon are decarbonizing their economies. Their manufacturers will be relying less and less on carbon polluting energy, making their products more competitive against US products if we don't do the same thing. So the longer we wait to price carbon in the US, the less competitive US manufacturers will be.
Can you direct your comments to the bill?
Sure. So as a volunteer of my local energy committee, I'd like to have the flexibility to use my knowledge about carbon pricing around the world strategically. We want to decarbonize our town for economic reasons. I believe our state should be doing the same thing. By ignoring carbon pricing coming from above, we're losing competitive advantage. we need to be able to, if the state won't do it, towns should be able to do it. They should be able to make decisions about how they want to get their energy generated. And especially with community power coming along, they should be able to guide what happens in their towns. So that's why I oppose this bill, because this is taking local control away. And it's not necessarily just a NIMBY issue. It can be an economic and strategic issue, and it can be an issue of letting the town do what it needs to do to meet what its citizens have voted they want to do.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Concludes the hearing on, yeah,
I don't see Nat's here any longer. Oh, you are here. Can I ask you a question on this?
Mike, yeah.
Absolutely, Senator. Nate Grace for the New Hampshire Municipal Association, for the record.
Okay, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but we just heard, and I know some communities around the state are, looking to net zero, and of course, net zero means you don't have to eliminate carbon-producing sources. It just means you have to balance them necessarily. But do you believe that a municipality has a legal right to exclude certain sources of energy from their municipalities?
So I think this is a very complicated topic. So what we have seen is we've seen some things like community power go into place, which would potentially change the source of where, for instance, the electricity is coming to a town. We've seen interest in having that move towards more solar, more wind power versus gas or coal generation. In terms of kind of the practical reality here, we've heard quite a bit about the site evaluation committee and how that would affect things like new pipelines going through, and there's a lot more state control over that. I think realistically, the one issue that we would have a concern with in the wording was one you pointed out earlier, which was or has the effect of restricting or prohibiting, simply because we're not clear exactly when a zoning ordinance would tip over and have the effect of restricting. But again, this is going to be a case-by-case basis, and we just simply haven't seen a whole lot of this at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Hearing none.
Thank you.
We close the hearing on 11:48. Waiting on, yeah, we're going to recess for 5 minutes and come back into executive session. 5 minutes being subjective.
So you took care of that?
How are you doing, Senator?
You are still back.
I guess that's part of it. I don't know my most life yet, so yeah, probably part of it. Yeah.
First of
So
all, is there a motion?
I'm going to move ought to pass for discussion purposes.
Is there a second? Okay.
So what do we got?
Senator Guida, do you have an amendment?
I do, and it as well needs a change, so
And
the
Senator
amendment
Guida?
is 1429S. And what this amendment attempts to do, first of all, start with line 9, 2A. At the end of the day, I'm a hunter as well, and I know many hunters. But to place a camera on someone else's property, my right to the privacy and the, if you will, the sovereignty of my property trumps any hunter's right to walk on it or camera on it or shoot on it. Any good sportsman hunter will get permission to hunt, and I think will get permission to place a camera. So I would strike 9 through 12,
9 through 12?
right? And also down through 15.
So 9 through 15?
No, yes, no, I'm sorry, my mistake. 9 through 12. I want to keep 13, but strike after December 31st. So what it does is effectively says a landowner may remove a game camera which the landowner has not authorized. It says may, right? To remain on his or her property after that date and shall notify the owner of any game camera that the landowner removes. Now, if I found a camera on my property, I would know who owned it and I'd give them a call. And I would tacitly remind them that perhaps in the interest of good sportsmanship and the privacy of my property, okay, if you want this camera on my property next year, you better ask for it. Again, this just reasserts the right of an individual's sovereignty over their own property. Further, not even getting to the discussion of privacy, right? So a camera could be placed anywhere on someone's property? No. And then the rest of it says pretty much what the other bill has, what the rest of the underlying bill has said.
All right, I'm just a little bit confused. So on line 13, basically, where are we starting?
So let's start at 9.
9, you strike?
And we're striking 9 through 12.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to strike on line 13 after December 31st.
That's what I thought you said, okay. And then it starts with a landowner, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And keep it from that point on, correct?
right.
And further discussion?
Now, I think I want to just note at line 25 where it offers a penalty of $1,000 for each offense, okay? I would incorporate that to include, if it can be proven, if a landowner removes a camera and doesn't notify the owner. All right, let's play fair here, okay? I can take your camera down, but those things are expensive, $300, $400, $500, some of them. And I think I have an obligation to tell you, otherwise I would consider that some form of theft. Sure.
I'm sorry I haven't focused enough on this yet, but, are they required to have the name on the game camera?
With the legislation that's being brought in.
Where is that in the legislation? That's the stand.
Yeah, because
I don't think that there's a requirement of identification on it. Wait a minute. Oh,
it was in section 3 on the top of page 2, but the amendment doesn't retain it.
oh, shall label the camera with that person's name and contact information, okay.
But if we replace section 3, we lose that language.
So we should have that in somewhere.
Right.
My only concern is if somebody comes and steals the camera on somebody else's private property, say your buddy that you went hunting with, he liked your camera, and he's really not your buddy, and he steals your camera, how do you know that he stole it versus the landowner?
You don't.
Right, so how would the landowner be responsible for it?
As I said in my remarks, Senator, if it can be proven.
Oh, if it can be, I totally missed that, yeah.
So would we want then on line 16 of your amendment, Senator Gaida, to include what is in the bill on page 2 at the top? Both 3 and 4?
Yes.
So we'd add 3 and 4 there.
And renumber.
Yeah, and then renumber this to 5. You're on line 16, your 3 becomes 5.
Roman phone, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's important because in 4 there, let's say you don't want to get involved with taking it down and trying to contact the person, and it's also a little unclear of contacting the person. Well, how hard do they have to try, or by what method? And the person might say, I was never contacted, but were they? We're not expecting a registered letter. Was it a phone call, phone message?
At the end of the day, Senator,
Yeah.
if you do the right thing and get permission, that all goes away.
Yeah, I agree, but I think this is a good solution you're proposing for this. I do, and protects privacy and protects hunters' rights too. So.
Yep, and I agree. I support needing the landowner's consent. I've talked to a couple hunters in my district, and they feel that obtaining consent is a very reasonable requirement, and we're going to end up with more and more posted land without it. So I would support what you're proposing.
All right. Senator Gray?
If you're gonna do Senator Gaida's amendments, you've got in line 14, after that date, I don't think you have a date anymore to refer to.
Okay.
I don't know why in section 3, use of a game camera to deter theft or vandalism. I mean, if it's my property, I can do anything I would like about theft and vandalism. And if one of my neighbors is putting a camera on there, I don't know how it applies to what we're trying to do here with game cameras, other than, that it's no longer a game camera, it's a security device. And why is my neighbor putting it on my property and not their property? Because I ought to be the one worried about my property. Had I made the motion first, I would have made a different motion than ought to pass.
I think I was originally with you guys.
There was a long pause waiting for the motion.
All right, so are you okay with Senator Gaida's amendment?
I think that the whole bill is not ready for prime time, and that it will end up with lands being posted, no trespassing, because that still would retain the owner's rights to hunt or have people who he agrees with hunt on his land, but then would also restrict hunting, would also restrict use of that land for recreational vehicles, both the winter and the summer.
I'm not sure how this bill does what you're saying it would, Jim.
Let me explain, if the chair will. Yeah. That if I want hunting to happen on my land, okay, then I can't post it no hunting, because if I post it no hunting, that sign actually in law applies to me too. I can't hunt my own land if I post it no hunting. Okay, so the only option I have is to post the land no trespassing. No trespassing means you need to get permission to go onto my land, would still allow me or people with permission to hunt, but it would also mean that anyone, if there were a path, whether it's bicycle path or a snowmobile path or an all-terrain vehicle path, they would have to come and see me to get permission to use that land or cross my land, okay? Which I think is not where we want to go. But you don't leave the landowner really a whole lot of options.
It is my understanding people can already put cameras on private property, which I don't like. I
Again,
don't like it a lot, to be frank with you. But I'm trying to make this work here in a particular way, but,
the point about people can already put cameras on someone's land is exactly what I'm telling you about when you go to the no trespassing. If I have posted that property, no trespassing, and you come in and put a camera, you have trespassed. And if you've got your name and address on there, not only do I have evidence that the camera is there, I know who you are, so I can now prosecute you. I mean, guys, you know, I'm really not happy with this bill.
But if it's, okay, but if it's not posted,
Then those things, although may not be desirable for me, they haven't risen to a level where it irritates me enough to go and every 100 feet or whatever the current statute is on posting to put the signs up.
and so what would be your hesitation about requiring consent for game cameras so that we can avoid posting? I'm trying to,
so this bill
Narrow that
basically
down.
is saying that you have to have consent of the landlord to post, to
Right.
put a camera on.
right,
Yeah?
and you disagree?
That part I don't, but what I am afeared of
Mhm.
is that action is now going to cause the landowner saying, I'd rather not have this, and make him more likely to post the land no trespassing.
Okay, it's a policy question, yeah.
We don't know.
All right.
Right.
Well, there are a couple other amendments that people want to attach on this, as well as myself. I have one here from you, Senator Waters. Is this yours?
I think it became Bradley's. okay?
Yes.
So we were both working parallel, and we don't need two, we got Bradley's.
All right, before I finish that, we still have a motion on this amendment of 1429 and turning it into section 5, correct?
Well, what
Got a lot of
we
changes.
have is, it's gonna, if we do it, it's gonna become a committee amendment.
Right.
And the committee amendment would be building off of Senator Guy's amendment. It would delete lines 9 to 12. It would delete the words after December 31st on line 13. It would add from the original bill Romans 3 and 4. And then renumber on line 16, Senator Guy's 3, Roman 5.
And then renumber on line 25, Senator Guida's 4
Yeah, that would then
to
be
6.
Roman 6.
And then on line 14, Senator Gray made a good observation that we should remove the words after that date.
Yeah.
If I might, on line 9, the Roman numeral 2 would
Needs to
stay.
Stay, right.
And that would be, you'd go down to line 13, and so it would say a landowner for Roman 2, and that way 3 and 4 don't change at all for that.
Yep.
Because,
Right.
you know, the A and B go away, but
Yep.
Roman 2 now becomes what was the old 2B.
Should we try to get this
So,
redrafted before we pass it? or
Could you
we-
explain that again? So
Yeah.
what you're saying is that,
The Roman 2, you had Roman 2A and you had Roman 2B.
right,
You took out A,
right, so
so
that
now
becomes
you
A
take
now.
out, so now it's, you can't have an A without a B.
Right, right,
Okay, so it all becomes Roman 2 now,
yeah, got
what
it.
was B, with
Got
your modifications, and then 3 and 4 fall in line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
You got that?
Well, since we're striking section 2, that's, or section 2A,
Mhm.
coming down, becoming the new Roman 2.
Right,
Mhm.
so, yeah, Exactly. And then on line 25, we had, repeat, Senator?
I got line 25 as a Roman 6.
Yep,
Yeah,
I got line 16 as a Roman 5.
yep.
but okay.
And then we're adding 3 and 4 from the underlying bill. And then the,
So should we vote on this first and then
Well,
consider Bradley's? Or
I think we ought to put them all together. I mean,
Okay.
have one vote, but it's your, I mean, Mr. Chairman, whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
Because
let's
I mean,
put it
we
all
don't-
together.
Yeah, because we don't have separate amendments, so.
All right.
So, I'm just trying to figure out, in terms of the underlying bill. So, this, in terms of the numbering, works out fine. I believe. Let me see.
After line 25 is line 6, so this one would be section 4 to 5 reads that we're considering Senator Bradley's bill right now, correct?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. Oh, I see what he's saying. Okay. So yeah, what this would do is it would add section 4. This is what we talked about extensively about the tree stand having the name on it. And I think pretty simple and seemed to make sense. So this just says if you're going to put up a tree stand, you got to have the name on it.
I thought that was already law.
No, it has to clarify it, and the dates are clarified.
All right, so that'll be under section,
This will become section 4, and then the existing section 4 becomes section 5. Is the effective date.
got that?
Section 5 is the effective date.
Yeah.
All right, are we all good with that?
Bradley's amendment?
Yes, Senator Bradley's amendment. And then we have Representative Lang's amendment.
Yeah, I think this is basically has been undone by and superseded by Senator Guida's amendment. So I don't think we need to act on that.
And then,
So I have a question on the Bradley amendment.
yep,
Yeah.
Portable tree stand of line that doesn't violate paragraph number 2. So we changed paragraph 2 to take out the August 31st to December
right.
31st.
Well, we kept, we kept that.
This is a different section of law.
Is it?
Yeah, this is 20736.
Yep.
So it's referencing back to this under that. Yeah.
All right, and then the final amendment is my amendment.
There's more.
Yeah. What's this one? I
Wait,
didn't like this
there's
bill in the
more.
first place.
Order now, and you get within.
Mine is 1433, and it has to do with,
Yeah, I don't have a copy of that.
you don't have a copy of mine? 14, all right, so basically this has to do with pistol and revolvers, and this chapter means firearms with barrels less than 16-inch length. It has another section on line 19, which says this chapter of firearms shall have the same meaning as in 18 U.S.C. section 921A3 as it appears April 12th, 2022, for the purposes of this chapter, meaning that the firearm shall not be construed in the manner that is broader than the definition under federal law.
So that's great, but what is this about?
Yeah.
What are you doing, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. It is.
What does this mean? What section of law you got?
It's definition under the federal law firearms. What had happened is a few years back, SB 500 passed, and the New Hampshire Firearms Coalition came out against that and said something about the definition. So I think they realized they made a mistake. Here's my bill. I got nicely
We
papered
get
on it.
copies of that. I
Yeah.
just got it.
Can I get a copy of it?
I'm a little slow, you know.
Yeah, you're not slow. All right, that's for everybody. It's has to do with firearms and it has to do with hunting. So
To avoid resistance to one of them. this is not an FN bill. So my thought is maybe we want to hold a hearing on that section. Just to
You don't have time.
Don't have time.
Yeah, I don't know
just
if
gotta
it's,
throw it
I
in.
don't know if it's, I mean, I don't know if this president might say, I mean, is this germane or not? And we haven't had a non-germane bill hearing on it.
Last day to act on House bills is the 5th, okay? So the only time that you would have to hold public hearing, if you follow the normal schedules, either tomorrow or next week. And if you did it next week, it would require an addendum calendar to get it on the May the 5th agenda. And
No, the calendar comes out at the end of this week, so it could go into the May 5th without an addendum.
what you would do is publish the public hearing in this calendar. All right, the public hearing would be on Tuesday, and then that's the only time that you can, when you would have a motion to put it on the regular calendar. So it would have to be posted for the public
Oh, I see
hearing
what
in
you're
one calendar, and then in the next calendar,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it would be,
Well, I bet there's gonna be an addendum calendar, because the bill's
don't
coming
doubt
out
that there will be,
on
but.
the second, but, yeah. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, does
I
this,
don't mind voting in favor of this, I just think it's gonna raise the question.
I don't mind raising the question. I'm not-
well, let me, just when we get it, I still don't.
It's basically just going
Understand
back to
this,
the federal definition of a firearm.
Okay.
So,
And what do we do that was different in states? I mean, do you have the state statute?
not on hand, no.
Alright.
Well, we passed the SB 500 a few years back, and
Well, so my concern is this, okay, I'm very nervous where this administration is, we've got 3 more years. They are not friendly to firearms, so they
Oh,
can,
yeah.
they can amend potentially the federal definition of firearms. Again, I
shall have the same meaning as of April 12th, 2022. Period. So whether they change it or not, it goes to the definition that is now.
So what is doing,
I believe
what
it
you're
has to do
doing
with,
on 19 to 22 change about the definition in 9 through 18?
I believe this has to do with powdered rifles, the powdered guns. They're not construed as the same as what we have.
So this is not,
Flintlock, matchlock, and percussion.
so this doesn't affect the definition of pistol or revolver. This is something separate, different.
Correct.
And so what is the definition of a firearm in 18 USC section 921A3?
So, right here, it says the pistol or revolver used in this chapter means a firearm with barrels less than 16 inches. It
Yeah,
does not
right.
include antique, it does not include antique pistols, guns, canes, or revolvers. Antique pistol, gun, canes, revolvers for this purpose of the chapter mean any pistol, gun, or revolver utilized in early type of ignition, including but not limited to flintlocks, wheel locks, and matchlock percussions and pin fire. But no pistol, gun, or cane or revolver, which I don't even know what a cane is, but or revolver which
There are
utilizes.
canes that have guns in them.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I've seen them, yeah. My grandfather had
Available
one.
for so it doesn't include like the center fire or rim fires,
Right,
basically. So basically, your powdered guns
right, okay,
are not considered firearms on,
fine.
yeah.
But
So
what does 19 to 22 do?
it basically goes back to the definition of firearms as of April 12th, 2022.
Well, what is that, what is the definition in that section of statute?
The things that are not included in this up here, basically your center fire and your rim fire, so your real bullets that, those type of guns.
Can we take a recess?
Absolutely, if you want.
Can we do an exec?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this, just don't understand it.
Yeah,
I don't know,
basically has to
you
do
know,
with the old-fashioned guns that.
Yeah, I mean, I have an old-fashioned gun, but I don't see how this here, I'm just not understanding how, where, I understand the first part, I just don't understand I'll try to look up that federal statute, okay?
Yeah.
I'll just look it up.
It's,
Yeah,
We
the
need to come
definition
out of
as
it
of now.
I'll just look it up.
I thought everybody had a copy of this. I don't know why.
No, that's good.
Senator Gray.
In lieu of doing a recess, as I think that right now, we've got a partial amendment. You've, expressed an interest to have that amendment also contain something else, that we're having a meeting tomorrow, that those amendments ought to get redrafted so that we can see them, and hopefully they'll get redrafted in time that we can actually look at them this evening.
Okay.
And
So-
then we can move on to other bills and cut the list down.
Can you have these drafted for tomorrow, the new amendment? All right.
Are we including your amendments?
I would like mine included, yes.
So we're doing
Might I suggest,
Barnes and Senator Bradley.
We can strike it.
Mr. Chair, if we have the amendments, first one with your amendment and the second one without your amendment, that way we'd be able to see both of them.
That sounds good.
And not that they would be ready for tomorrow, but they would be ready for close of business today, so that we'd have time to actually look at them.
So you want one including Senator Barnes' amendment and one not?
That's my
One with and
suggestion
one
to
without.
the chair.
One with and one without.
It's a good suggestion, Senator.
right. So,
What's next?
I would like HB 478. This is that PFAS bill. And I'll entertain a motion on this. Do we have to unmotion this last one that we just did? No, we don't have to, right?
There was no vote on it.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion on HB 478? This had to do with PFAS, again, in the St. Cobain situation.
I got the definition, I think this is okay.
Yeah.
It's a starter pistol and silencers and mufflers.
Mhm.
That's the definition. And if we just put those in our statute, it's
So-
consequential, I think.
That's what I thought.
Okay, yeah, but I'm sorry, if we just may have one more word on this. I think it would be technically possible, I think we could, if we have noticed, I don't know, was it 24 hours we need? Because you could notice a non-germane hearing for tomorrow on this amendment, if you think that. But otherwise, I think it just, then it'll be up to the Senate President to say we have a non-germane amendment, and without objection, we can proceed.
We got 24 hours.
Would you guys support that?
I don't see any problem with this.
Okay.
I don't, but,
Without a hearing, I don't know the issues, but David can help
just-
me understand them.
So let's post that now daily, because it's before 11, 24 hours,
there's the
all right?
federal statute right there, starter pistol and silent muffler. I mean, if it's the federal definition, it's the federal definition.
Senator Gray.
Did you want to come out of executive session, recess while that's happening, and then reconvene?
Or we have
Or
other bills
just
we
sit
wanna-
here and not do anything for?
We can exec other things.
He's the one that's taking the notes.
So,
I think we should recess, let him go get it in the calendar, if we're gonna go that route.
I did ask Grant if we could do that leadership.
just
Said-
tell him I want to do it.
I know, I said that the committee wants to do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what he says, but at first he said no. So,
No to what?
the hearing notices require 4 days, that's what he's saying.
Oh, okay. So,
24 hours?
So unless any, I mean, I don't know what the sentiment of the rest of the committee is, but I think that we would tomorrow be able to proceed and make our decision on this, and you can talk with Chuck
Okay.
and just give him a heads up that we might be, or Jeb, there might be,
A non-germane amendment.
yeah.
Okay.
Although, I mean, it's not entirely non-germane, but.
Has to do with hunting.
There's tree stands.
Has to do with.
But that, look, it's,
It's Christmas tree time.
if you can get the ducks in a row and then shoot them with a starter pistol, you're good to go.
There you
okay?
go. All right, so,
The starter
that being
pistol with a
said, we'll
silencer.
finish it out.
All right.
Are we doing something wrong?
I'm not sure.
We're not sure we're going to notice. We have a non-germane amendment. Can we do that? Or do I have to post it?
Yeah, we would need to talk to leadership about that, and it would require 4 days notice.
4 days, okay.
We can do it this week.
Okay.
Can you do a floor amendment?
Can we do it as a floor amendment?
Just talk to leadership.
Okay.
If they're good with a non-germane amendment, that he can ask if there's objection, we can do it.
What's that?
Like the marriage license thing you did last week, similar procedurally.
Right.
Yep.
All right, so
Okay.
we'll talk to leadership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I figured we did some drawing.
So
No
we'll
offense.
get the, we'll get the two, yeah.
So is there a motion to withdraw?
I'm happy to do that. We can
Yeah,
go to
yeah.
second.
All right, and then you'll draft up the two amendments as without the firearm thingy, right?
One with, one without.
All right, so
Okay.
now, is there a motion on HB 478?
So, Chair, what we did with SB 341, which was identical, is we recommended interim study pending an opinion from the court whether all remedies had been satisfied. And I don't know that we have word back on that, so I erased that only because,
And I was told Representative Mooney had another amendment, but I don't have it, and I don't have, obviously, we're not getting a whole lot done right now, so I'm just gonna entertain a motion.
Interim study?
Interim study? Is there a second?
I'll second for purposes of discussion.
Okay.
Representative Mooney, there's a meeting taking place tomorrow with the stakeholders in this.
I'm gonna be out of committee at 12 tomorrow, and we have a lot of bills. I have this whole,
I'm gonna run the clock.
I have all these to do tomorrow, plus hearings. So,
And can we wait until our May 5th
on this one?
date to act? Or you
we
want to get
would
everything?
naturally meet on May 3rd, right? Or are we trying to get everything done tomorrow?
We're trying to get a lot done, and
It'll have to be on the Senate floor on the 5th, so we can't really have a committee on the 3rd because it would be.
I see.
Go to the.
I see.
yeah.
Well, we've done the calendar addendums from Tuesdays before.
That's the impression that I've been under. Is that
Okay.
they've been telling us that's why
We're trying to do it tomorrow. Okay.
I've had no communication from Representative Mooney, and this is
I've got it here, I've got it here, I just got it this morning.
okay. So there's a motion for interim study.
This needs to be shared, because what it
I'm
does,
sorry.
it takes us out of adjudicating.
Okay,
Let me read what it does here. It's got all the findings, et cetera.
but,
The remedy, the general court finds that the ongoing operation and treatment costs for the water treatment system for wells 4 and 5
I think that's going to go on,
should not be borne by the Merrimack Village Water District ratepayers who are not responsible for the contamination. Therefore, and here's where it changes. By I'm sorry. Therefore, by January 1 of '23, the Department of Environmental Services, working with the Merrimack Village Water District and St. Gobain Performance Plastics, shall propose an appropriate remedy that includes all costs associated with the continued operation, monitoring, and maintenance, and any necessary additional modifications thereto, as determined by the Water District of the water treatment system, blah, blah, blah. Now, I will say that I had a discussion with Bob Scott. And what happened was that there are 3 parties here, right? 4. You got BES, you've got St. Gobain, you've got the water district, and you've got the people, the community. And apparently the water district, for better or worse, got ahead of itself and negotiated this legally binding document, not thinking beyond the 5 years. So, you know, no matter what we do, the attempt is try to remedy the, call it the insufficient remedy provided by the water district for the benefit of the people of the community that don't want to have to pick up the bill. That's seconded for interim study. I think, you know, we can't save them from a legally binding document.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. You know, these water districts are tricky. I've had an issue similar to, not on PFAS, but
We
similar
both
to this
have,
with
yeah.
the water district in Rollinsford. And it's complicated, but it is a legally binding decision. And, you know, as with Senator Daniels' bill, we sent it off to the courts, and I'm not really sure we can fix the Merrimack's problems, as much as I'd like to. You know, this PFAS, that committee has been so hammered. You know, now St. Cobain, for one of the 100 families, is going to be giving them a bottle of water. But I'm not sure.
And there's a time on that.
I kind of think interim study is unfortunately the way we have to go.
I think so too.
So how about a replace all amendment saying DES has to enforce some laws or something because
Yeah, really.
regardless of what the town committed to with St. Cobain, yet there's still a possibility that these contaminants are going into Litchfield, into Derry. Who knows if it's going into the Merrimack River, and people are drinking from the Merrimack River in Nashua. So how about a replace all amendment? DES needs to enforce the law or something that will put some pressure on St. Cobain to live up to their agreement. We're not the courts. We can't force them to go back to court. We don't want to interfere with the court as a legislature. However, DES has the responsibility of enforcing the laws that we pass down. Senator Gray.
So I have a law that they're supposed to be enforcing, and then I pass another law that says you have to enforce the bill.
So why aren't
I'm not going there.
Right, so why aren't they?
Well, you know, not that this is a hammer that we use sometimes, but, you know, there could be a request for an audit of DES on these enforcement issues.
Yeah, they didn't do so hot on the audit for wetlands. So 500+ pages. It was the most scathing indictment of bureaucratic overreach, ineptitude, failure of compliance, and so forth in the history of the state.
So, I mean.
So far.
So far, yes.
So with regards to this, though, I mean, we're seeing two attempts for enforcement using the legislature and trying to make it go to the courts, and obviously that's not going to work, and there's a separation of powers. However, we do have the authority to do something or to say, hey.
But they could go to court, Mr. Chairman.
Right, at whose expense?
Well, but, you know, I mean, these were actions by delegated bodies in that municipality.
Yeah.
And so those delegated bodies were speaking on behalf of the people there. And now if the people don't like what they did, they can of course replace them in an election, but there's really no alternative but for the people to go to court if they don't like what the settlement is. And I don't see, I mean, you know.
What will Litchfield do? If the contaminant, they weren't part of the negotiation.
Well, then they can bring suit now. They can do that right now if they're being damaged.
Yeah, I think interim study is a great motion.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we vetted it, so.
It's the best we can do right now, I think.
Unfortunately.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle because I'm sorry that it just doesn't feel, without any action to take it to court, it just doesn't feel right for us to step in. And I do worry, I mean, there's questions of fact here, right? I mean, the releases in the agreement shall not apply in the event that the levels of PFOA, PFOS, or any other PFAS in the finished water following treatment by the system exceed any federal or state drinking water quality standards that may be applicable to any such constituents in the future. Such exceedances are due to St. Cobain's operations, and such exceedances are not attributable. So I say all that only not to extend our deliberation, but only to say that, you know, there are questions of fact here. And while, you know, I sympathize, and I do think that, you know, something involving our state government would be important to help remedy this, it doesn't feel like this action is right from my perspective.
Okay.
Further discussion?
So it might be, has everybody got their mics on? So I'm not, there we go. So the thought might be that the committee sends a letter to the department saying,
Hey, what the hey?
now, I can tell, I spoke with Commissioner Scott. He's uncomfortable with this because you're putting DES in the middle of a legally binding document and water problem. But at the end of the day, I still think DES has a hammer to be able to test and find something wrong and then act on its own. I know they can levy significant fines if remedies aren't carried through.
Neighboring towns. if the contaminants are being traced to neighboring towns, DES can do something.
Right, so I think maybe a letter, I'm
Which
not
may
sure.
force the hand of St. Cobain to say, hey, look, all right, live up to your agreement.
Well, they're living up to their agreement, that's the problem. The agreement was negotiated by the water district, and frankly, short-sighted, saying 5 years and only those wells, and hey, that's the deal.
I do just want to caution us too, though, that, I mean, we did hear testimony during the hearing report that St. Cobain is taking the position, and this is not necessarily a reason to change what we're doing, but it's just something to be aware of, that, you know, any fines that they might then be responsible for, they're using the indemnity clause to go back to the town. So
Because they indemnified them. I
I'm
mean,
just
who did
drawing
this?
the fact pattern, yeah.
But that being said, they also, according to the news, have agreed to provide water to those people affected. So, I think this is one vote interim study, and we extract ourselves and come back if we need to next year.
All right, so let's just go forward, interim study, then seconded, all in favor of interim study?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Is there a motion for consent? Seconded by,
Almost, yeah.
by Senator Gaida, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Senator Gaida, would you like to take this one out?
No.
You're welcome.
You talk the most, so that's what happens.
Seconded by Senator Gaida,
So-
motioned by.
Usually by Senator Waters and second by me.
All right, sorry. I feel bad.
Yeah, I know.
10:49, we didn't accept 10:49? Okay.
That hearing's tomorrow.
Yeah. So, how about 1299? Is there a motion on 1299?
Please give me a moment.
Last note I had on that is Senator Waters to work on it.
Establishes procedure for applying for a permit to import or display wildlife and establishes the appeal process and denial for such permits. CWD, blah, 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 direct.
So I have quite a few notes here that but it's just, we might be complicated. Maybe I should just huddle with Daily after, and we could exec it tomorrow. I mean, or I could say now what we have. So I'll move on to pass.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. All right. For applying for a permit to import or display wildlife establishes an appeals process and denial for such permit.
So
What's the,
May import or possess, sell, or exhibit, release any live marine species. What? Okay.
what I had thought was, and just follow me here, and this kind of reflected what the chief of the wildlife division thought, that we are kind of giving away we're flipping the thing here, and the concern was that if you flip it, you're kind of playing cleanup after, and that is not a situation they wanted to be in. But there's a very legitimate point being brought forward that if you want to do this, you ought to get a permit in a timely way and be able to appeal any decision. So.
And the department did recognize the fact that there was a problem with the appeals process.
So what I propose is we take out the strike-through. Okay? So take out the strike-through on lines 9 through 12. Through such permit, take out the strike-through.
meaning leave that in?
Leave it in.
Yeah, leave it in. Then, that next sentence is the chief of the Wildlife Division shall respond to request for permit within 60 days of the submission of a final request. The chief of the Wildlife Division shall respond to request for a permit within 60 days of the submission of a final request. Then, you got that?
Is there something before a final request?
Submission of a final request.
So is there an initial request?
There might be a response that you provided incomplete information, you forgot to sign this form, those kinds of things. Then, on line 19, there was concern about direct and,
Significant.
and so just strike direct and.
On line 19,
Yeah.
Just the word direct.
and,
Yeah.
direct and.
Okay.
Then on line 21, any person who is denied a permit under subparagraph A may appeal the decision in writing to the director of Fish and Game. And I know they wanted to go to the commission, but we heard in the hearing that the commission has no scientific background necessarily on these things, and the director is the one to whom all other appeals go to, so why should this be different? And then add, on line 22, the director shall respond to the appeal within 60 days.
Within 60 days?
Within 60 days. So, Daley, just to repeat on this one, on line 22, it's going to read, in this decision in writing to the director, so you're striking Fish and Game Commission, to the director within 60 days of the denial. And then add the sentence that the director shall respond to the appeal within 60 days.
So I guess my question is, since the person that denied the request is a director, now you're asking the appellate process to go back to the director.
That's not unusual. That's kind of,
But why would you, I mean, if he's been,
Isn't it the chief shall respond
Yeah,
to
you see-
request for?
yeah, the chief has responded. The chief has responded to the permit. So it's the chief who said yes or no on the permit. And then if they don't like what the chief has said, it goes to the director. So that, the appeals process is the chief, and it's the chief who does these things,
okay,
in general.
gotcha,
And so the appeal is goes up to the boss.
thanks.
So Daley, if we have it,
I'll second that.
Yeah, what I have is we're keeping what is striked out from lines 9 through 12.
right,
We're not gonna strike it, we're gonna keep it. And then we're adding, the chief of the Wildlife Division shall respond to a request for a permit within 60 days of its submission for a final request. Add that, I didn't know with the line, which line that's on the.
right. So the tail end of 12 through the beginning of 15 stays struck.
Right, so the executive director at that part stays struck. And on to, and it ends with species.
Okay.
So after permit, which is unstruck, is where the changes take place.
That we add that sentence.
Yep.
And then the strike, then we add, we go with what the bill has, except on line 19, taking out direct and.
And then line 22, I have, we're striking, Fish and Game Commission, but we're bringing the director of Fish and Game.
Correct.
No, just say, writing to the director, because he's been referenced before.
To the
All we
director,
gotta do is put in director.
to the director, right.
To the director of Fish and Game, and then we're adding, after line 22, the director shall respond to the appeal within 60 days.
Yep.
And,
That's okay.
yeah, C still there? The executive director shall adopt the rules pursuant to RSA.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
the
okay.
director does
Yeah.
it, yeah.
All right, so it's been seconded. All in favor of the committee amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none,
I'll move up to pass as amended.
further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, is there a motion for consent?
Consent.
Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Senator, who wants to take this?
Glad to do it.
Senator Waters takes this out.
I think this month will be okay with what we did. I mean, I think it's the way to go, and he's gotten something out of this, so.
1186. This bill requires shelters to accept companion animals during a declared state of emergency. Senator Gray, do you have any motion on this one?
I thought there was an amendment that was proposed. I didn't propose the amendment.
Yeah, we've had some, Senator Gray and I had some conversation on this, and I'll fill you in on that.
Is it the Pearl Amendment?
1186.
No, I don't have that.
What's a companion animal as opposed to a service animal?
Family dog.
Apparently a cat, dog, or other things.
Or parrot, or a snake. Believe it or not, people have snakes.
So, the question came up was, okay, who are we requiring to do this, to accommodate these animals? And Senator Gray was concerned, well, what if some place that really can't handle this has said, now you have to? So I looked into the existing statute from Homeland Security and from municipal laws. And what each municipality is required under statute to do is to establish an emergency procedure for a declaration of emergency. Homeland Security and state statute gives the authority to declare it, and then in the procedures, each municipality is required to have an emergency preparedness plan, and that is reviewed and approved. They're incredibly extensive. I looked at some of them. They're very long and extensive, but they're reviewed and approved by Homeland. And in that, it says that prior to an emergency, you will have designated what the emergency facility is and its capabilities. And those locations have to be approved. And I looked at a bunch of these plans, and they tend to be a high school, middle school, some kind of thing like that has the capacity to do that. So if a trailer is to be brought in, well, high school or middle school is going to have a parking lot. So it seemed to me that this was not disrupting, kind of existing plans in terms of the selection of the site, and that you're not allowed under emergency to suddenly say to somebody, you're an emergency shelter. You can't do that. These have to have been pre-designated and pre-approved. So I think that makes, at least in terms of that question, I think that question is answered by that. So I don't think this is doing anything that's going to intrude upon any property owner or any municipality. And what it says is municipality, you already have this plan, you've got a designated facility, and you're going to need to accommodate people's pets. And the reason for doing that is so that they will not be reluctant to evacuate when they really should. So, I don't know what people think, but there's what I have.
Further discussion?
So how many communities do we think actually have a designated companion animal facility?
Well, they don't have to have a facility per se, it's just that when the emergency is recall, they'd have to bring in, the idea is you bring in a trailer, because the pets are not gonna be with the people. The companion,
Right, so now
the
you've got-
companion animals can be with the people.
Cats, dogs, did they get rabies shots, distemper, parvo?
That's why you got the trailer, because
You're
it,
gonna put all these animals,
you know,
you're gonna have separate cages for them, or?
well, that's what's done. And the reason it's in a separate facility is that if any problem like that, or somebody's allergic, you
No,
know,
that's exactly what.
that nobody is going in that trailer except for the, you know, the Humane Society personnel or whoever, or the, you know, local shelter, or whoever, you know, animal shelter who's running that, you know, during the plan. And I think that what they do is they probably in their municipal plan would say, you know, if we have one of these, this is the group that takes care of it, and here are the procedures. I mean, these emergency plans are just like,
Oh, I know.
yeah, you know, you see them. I mean, you probably have done work on one for your community, but.
So it wouldn't, I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying that it wouldn't jeopardize, say you received federal funding for an emergency and it was used to help fund some of these shelters.
I think
It would be
that, you know,
previously
we
approved.
fund emergencies, and
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, I think I don't think there's practical problems per se. It's just that the trade-off is, you know, the statute has some responsibilities, and that is true, but the trade-off is, will it help encourage people to evacuate when they ought to? So, people want to be with their animals.
Okay, so I see a hand up in the audience. You may.
Tell me what I did wrong.
How long do you have?
Yeah, I know.
Thank you for taking the time to hear from me. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding correctly. My name is Karen Susi. I work at Sheehan Finney Capital Group, and I am here on behalf of the rescue shelters, surprisingly. I guess, are you stating that if there's a state of an emergency, you would want the shelters to take responsibility, or that would be, I just want to clarify that.
No, if I may,
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah.
So the idea, I was just throwing out there that emergency management plan might want to make arrangements for how that trailer or whatever they bring in is going to be managed.
I guess I was trying to clarify who would be responsible for managing that.
Yeah, I mean, municipalities would kind of have to have conversations about that, like they do everything else that's in that plan. And they can't just say you're doing something. They can't do that. It has to
Certainly.
be, you know, agreed on.
Thank you. Just want to clarify.
Okay.
So with this, then, we're mandating that communities be prepared to do this, right? Is that a 28 issue? You gotta buy cages? You gotta have food? Maybe veterinary care for injured, I mean, where does this stop?
Well, if I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
please.
so,
We're in executive.
we already require communities to have emergency management plans. They're gonna be feeding people too. People won't be in cages. And it's not necessarily you buy them. I mean, I think that's, again, how they do anything in an emergency plan is something that the governing body has to figure out. And it's basically saying, when you're, in your emergency plan, when you're setting up your emergency shelter facility, you know, and doing agreements on that, that you also include the capacity for companion animals. Now, I will say that,
It would be a centralized food supply in this premise.
that's, you know, you look around at what disasters happen, a lot of people wanting to bring in food for the animals and so on. Now, I will say too, that we are already mandated and providing service animal. So it's, I mean, those are different, but it's not like this is a mystery as to taking care of people's, you know, I mean, the service animals, you gotta, you know, by the ADA, you've got to deal with them in your emergency plan, and they all include it. But, and, I mean, the ADA stuff in emergency plans is very extensive. And this is now saying, okay, make in your plan, you should make accommodation for how you're gonna deal with people's.
So there is an amendment, the Pearl Amendment?
Pearl Amendment, if you're talking about 0727, that was incorporated in the House version.
Yeah.
So further discussion.
I have problems with line 8 and 9, maximum number of animals per family entering the hotel or community shelter. All right, that's no longer talking about the trailer, it's saying entering the hotel or community shelter. Okay? That to me has gotta go.
All right, and a couple of parts too, isn't it, Senator Gray, line 5?
Well, line 5 is modified further down when it talks about the trailers. So I
Oh,
didn't.
I see what you're saying, is that it's, yeah, that's just if it's in the parking lot out there. Okay.
So,
Where do we strike it then?
well, to me,
Strike the whole
if,
sentence.
if,
Yeah, just
if
strike
you're
hotel.
taking out entering the hotel or community shelter,
Right,
and then the maximum
yeah.
maximum number of animals per family shall comply with local ordinances, I don't know that
That makes sense.
Take the whole sentence out.
I think that makes, I think that makes sense to strike that on line 8, strike the hotel or, yeah, for sure. Because then you're not getting into the problems of the allergies.
you would at minimum strike entering the hotel or community shelter as a minimum. Because if they're gonna be in the trailer,
Well, it's the family entering the community shelter, so that's the,
It shall comply with
well,
local
so
laws.
I guess I guess the question is, this is not saying that the animals are entering the hotel, it's saying that if you're a family that's going into a hotel or community shelter,
take out per family, because that's a modifier. And so it says the maximum number of animals entering the hotel or community shelter.
I think that taking that language out doesn't hurt anything because it still
Yeah.
says the maximum number of animals per family shall comply with local ordinances.
Did you want to strike out per family though? Is that what you just said?
No,
Oh, okay.
the minimum I wanted taken out was entering the hotel or community shelter.
Okay.
I agree with you, but I don't know that it hurts.
All right, and was there an issue with the line 6 shall?
Family emergency.
Okay, yep.
okay, so what we have here is, it would read, the maximum number of animals per family shall comply with local ordinances.
I
Maybe we
would
should
see,
just say per sheltered family, how about that, so that we don't get any confusion there.
Okay. For sheltered families.
Yeah, the maximum number of animals per sheltered family shall comply with local ordinances.
now, to me, that gives us, when we look at Wolfboro and the Dalmatians, or
Yep.
not Dalmatian, but the dogs that
Yep.
were up there, or some other breeder and stuff, that the town
Yeah, really.
shouldn't be required to,
They absorbed a lot of that cost,
80
right?
dogs.
Yeah.
Poor hell.
Well, and there were other situations
Yeah.
with
Good
beagles as well.
Yeah, good thought. Yeah, good thought.
All right, so let's just recoup real quick and then move on. So read that back to us, Daley.
So on line 8, or starting on line 8, the maximum number of animals per sheltered family shall comply with local ordinances.
Got it.
Further discussion? So all in favor of the committee amendment?
Do you want Bob to come back? Or?
No, he's going.
Okay, aye. We'll move on to pass as amended.
Discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Seeing none. Passes. Senator Perkins Booker, you haven't got one yet? All right, you get that. I think we have one more that I'll do for today, so Bob just had to leave. 1185. Bill enables water treatment plants to require providers of discharge to test such discharge for PFAS. Is there a motion on this? Is there any?
So, if I may just say, I have my note here saying Tracy Wood said this is not necessary, that they already can do this.
They already can do this, yes.
So,
That's how I read it.
I guess I'll move ITL.
Yeah.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor of ITL?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. All right,
Who's taking it out?
Senator Gray, would you like the honors? Take that out, and I'm gonna have a motion to move out of exec, seeing how we
There's two bills that we heard today at least that,
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off on a couple of them. I would like to wait for Senator Guy to be back.
Okay.
So we'll have 11 bills to take that tomorrow.
Yep.
We'll have fun.
Before it gets-
And you'll be worked to the bone.
I don't think he's coming back. Pretty sure he's not. All right, so we put a hold on 490, 1185, we're hearing 270, 148, 1330, 1330. Yeah, I want to hold off on this till tomorrow. So with that, is there a motion to move out of exec?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, seeing none.
You have a second, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman? So- All right, no, I can't turn it off.
Any preferences right now? I mean, $12.85.
Want to do 1331?
Brett McKee.
I'm good with both 1285 and 1331.
Yeah,
I'll move out and pass on 1331.
I want to wait on that tomorrow, Senator.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, so 1285, you okay with it, 1285?
Yeah.
All right, so,
I'll move out to pass on 1285.
in second.
Second.
Senator Gatter, okay, discussion.
Let me at least open my folder up.
Multi-use platform privacy standards requiring conditions accessible. Online energy data.
Changes one word.
Yep.
3 words to 1 word. It's efficiency, right?
Yep.
You've gone from 3 words to 1 word.
Yep.
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Consent?
aye.
Aye.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of consent?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none.
I'm happy to take this out.
Senator Perkins, well done.
Thank you.
Make sure you get some good talking points on this one.
I'm a team player, you know?
So the first 2 bills, I'm holding off until tomorrow. I even wanted to hold off on 1148 until tomorrow as well. So,
What was the reason for holding off on 1331?
because Senator Daniels may have an amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
What else can we do here?
1220?
Oh,
I think, yeah, right, 1278, we have to wait.
We did
We
1220.
did 1220.
1148, we can do 1258.
Again,
1270,
those are the ones that we heard today. I want to hold off on those until
and
tomorrow.
that's 1331. We have to wait for 1356, 1293.
490s tomorrow.
That's 490, I got one amendment.
So, well, we got one done. So we're down to 10.
Okay.
9 now.
9.
9.
All right. Well, that's better. So is there a motion to move out of exec? We got 2 more done. All right.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say none. And we are adjourned. There we are.
All right, so anyways, I'll, Rebecca and I will talk separately because we can't hear us talking.
Yeah.
But, you want to be ready to go? Well, I mean, it's just saying that would be debatable. But the question is on the bill. I do think we ought to change the effective date